Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Johnson Financial Group, helping customers build financial plans around their unique goals for over 55 years. More at johnsonfinancialgroup.com. Johnson Bank and Johnson Wealth Inc. are Johnson Financial Group companies.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Joy Powers. Today, we'll look at the local reaction to sexual abuse allegations against Cesar Chavez and examine how historical figures are honored. Then, we'll learn how Axe Housing helps people become homeowners in Milwaukee.
To me, the most powerful thing that I feel that they're doing is that education piece. I mean, housing is very complicated.
Plus, in our economic check-in, we'll hear how one local business owner is trying to plan for the future.
My husband and I have had the conversation of, okay, we're going to start setting aside a certain amount of money just in case, I have to go find a different career.
All of that is coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Joy Powers, and thank you so much for joining us. A New York Times investigation has uncovered sexual abuse allegations against Latino civil rights leader Cesar Chavez. Since then, cities throughout the country have removed or are considering removing Chavez's name from buildings, street signs, plaques, and more. In Milwaukee, a statue of Chavez at El Rey Family Market was removed on Chavez Drive. City leaders say there will be a conversation about renaming the street as well, and Milwaukee's celebration of Cesar Chavez Day has been canceled. WUWM's race and ethnicity reporter Taryn Powell is joined by Marquette professor Sergio Gonzalez. He shares his perspective on reevaluating how we honor historical figures.
Let's just start with the movements that he was a part of. In Latino civil rights, I can admit that my knowledge of Cesar Chavez is not extensive, but let's talk briefly about his work and how people came to center him and really honor him compared to, other leaders of the movement. Why was he so significant?
Absolutely. So Chavez has historically been recognized as one of the most important figures in two really big movements from the 1960s. One, of course, is the Migrant Farm Worker Union movement that started out of California, but had different manifestations across the United States and really put the issue of migrant farm workers in California and across the country on a national stage. The other is kind of the larger movement of Mexican-American civil rights, often referred to as Chicano civil rights of that very same period. And Chavez kind of became one of the most important figures as he was recognized across the country for his advocacy and for his effectiveness in building this broad-based social movement that became much more than this regional or California movement, but a national movement. During this period, he was kind of placed on the same stage as individuals like the Reverend Martin Luther King. He shared the stage with people like Robert F. Kennedy and was recognized for his work during that period. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, his status kind of grew nationally as he was commemorated as kind of one of the most important figures of Mexican American and Latino civil rights. And I think the fact that he has kind of assumed such a large position in the American imagination speaks to two different things. One, of course, is the fact that Latinos have grown as a population across the country, and we've been kind of trying to find ways as a nation to commemorate the history of this people. The other fact, of course, is, as you mentioned, many people might know the name of Chavez, but they might not know his history, which speaks to the fact that Americans are still doing a lot of work to catch up to understand the history of a people that have been a part of this country since before parts of this country, even part of the United States.
Talk about why that kind of recognition was significant as well, him kind of being immortalized in those ways.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the fact, again, that, a lot of Americans didn't have a large Rolodex to pull from when they were thinking about important figures in American history who are of Latino descent. And Chavez would often be kind of the go-to individual. People would kind of remember his historic marches, his leadership in the 1960s and 1970s. And so everywhere from, California to Wisconsin to Washington State to Florida when places would be named in honor of Latino individuals and Latino communities, his would be the name that would rise up. And on one hand, that kind of speaks to, of course, the importance of the farm worker movement of the 1960s and 1970s. It also speaks to the fact that sometimes local communities have not sufficiently commemorated their own Latino community's history. That's the case here in Wisconsin, of course. The fact that 16th Street was renamed after Chavez instead of the numerous individuals of Latino descent who are of importance here in Milwaukee, across the state of Wisconsin, it's really taken the work of community members and historians to better fill in those academic holes that exist so that we're not kind of turning to a figure from a different state who was only in Wisconsin a number of times, a handful of times for commemoration. And I think the moment that we're in right now, as Chavez's name is being taken down, as his statue is being taken down in places like Milwaukee, as is the case across the United States, it's forcing a lot of different reckonings. And I'm hoping we can talk about those. One of them, of course, is the question of whose stories and which community stories are going to be commemorated in public spaces.
That made me just think about, we just in Milwaukee, they renamed the Fourth Mineral Play area is now Clementina Castro Park. And I think that gets as recognizing, work locally, these figures that have had, equal kind of impact.
That's exactly right. You have, the Castro family has done a phenomenal job to preserve the story of Clementina Castro, and she was one of these individuals who spent her entire life advocating for Latinos on the South Side and across the state of Wisconsin. But her story might have been lost had it not been the work of her family, as well as local community members who have been trying to make sure that we recognize these individuals who played such a pivotal role in making the community what it is today. So it speaks to two different things. One is, of course, the work that we have to do as a state to better understand the history of Latinos who, I will note, have been in Wisconsin for over 100 years, have been members of the state for such a long period of time, and yet who barely register as a footnote among most of our institutional histories of this place that we love. The second thing, of course, is the constant reckoning that we have to have as a community about the way in which we decide to commemorate individuals, communities, institutions, and social movements. There are, of course, pitfalls when you decide to raise someone up to an elevated position so high as someone like Chavez, rose in the American imagination, in the minds of Latinos across the United States. Because when you place someone on a pedestal, of course, it sometimes puts blinkers on the way in which we kind of recognize not just their great achievements, but more importantly, I think in a situation like this, their faults as well.
So as we continue to talk about his name, imagery, likeness, coming down from all these things, everybody's still trying to figure out like next steps, like what do we do? Some people are even talking about renaming things after Dolores Huerta, who, of course, is one of the women who has come forward and is also co-founder of the National Farm Workers Association. What's the impact you see of taking the name, the imagery down, like if it does anything to the movement, the impact of, his work as a whole? Recognizing he also did not do that work by himself, but.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we need to view this as an opportunity to reckon with the past of a social movement, the past of a community, but also see it as an opportunity to educate a larger public. You mentioned Dolores Huerta, who played such an important and pivotal role in the creation of the farm workers movement and has continued to this day to be an important voice in advocating for Latinos in questions of immigration, economic policy, and labor rights. This is an opportunity not so much, I think, to cancel, to use kind of the terminology that we often fall into in 2026, but to rethink the way in which we want to preserve these stories. And I think most importantly, share these stories with our students, share these students with our communities. One of the dangers, of course, of building monuments, of naming streets after people is that they exist in a sense of permanence, right? If you build a statue to someone, you can't do anything to change that statue once it's there other than take it down. When you name a street after someone, it exists on a street sign, but there's not much space to have a deep conversation about who this individual was or what they represented. And so I think one of the things that communities like Milwaukee is going to have to go through as is happening across the country is to talk about the way in which we commemorate the history of individuals, of social movements, more importantly, of communities, whether we think that physical structures are the best way to do that, or more importantly, if they are the only way to do that. We'll never get away from the way in which we kind of commemorate history in those public ways, whether it's statues or naming sites after people. But there has to be a larger way in which we do this work so that we can have those complicated conversations. So it's not the black and white of canceling and forgetting or celebrating and putting on a pedestal. But again, to see these people as living human beings who participated in a longer stream of history, one that was being made by communities writ large, by social movements, not just one person.
Mm-hmm. And so, when we think about having these conversations in the classroom, for example, like how would you approach this with your students?
Well, we have this conversation. In fact, every semester that I teach my urban history class here at Marquette, which is centered around questions of commemoration in public space. And I think it's important because it's a conversation not just about the things that we think are important in public space, but it's a conversation about who gets to make the decisions about what gets remembered in public space. And so this can kind of expand across a broad spectrum of different topics. One is the question, of course, of statues and naming streets. The other is the questions of historic designation, which buildings get preserved. We think about the different markers that we have in public space. And so, unfortunately, the Chavez situation is part of a longer set of case studies that I would use and I will use in the future with my students as we think about, the reckonings of 2020 and the way in which protesters in cities all across the country were demanding the removal of not only Confederate monuments celebrating individuals who were slaveholders, but also conversations that we had about the founding fathers. What does it mean to commemorate someone like Thomas Jefferson or George Washington? The conversation about Chavez is part of that longer conversation that we need to have as communities, as we think about whose history gets preserved and in what ways are we telling those stories in a way that's not static, which can really fall into the trap that happens when you have a physical documentation, but also that are fluid and that are active and that invite all of us to be a part of the conversation. The last thing that I want to note here is to really reemphasize the opportunity that this presents us, specifically as a Wisconsin community. There are so many aspects of Latino history in our state that still to this day continue to be ignored, silenced, or kind of live within the shadows of people's attics, of people's closets. And we have to think about what this opportunity offers us, how we can commemorate Latino history, and thinking about the Latino communities that deserve historical commemoration in our city and across our state. So while we're thinking about the future, not just of 16th Street, not just the statues commemorating Chavez, we should be thinking about how can we do a better job of educating ourselves about this history to make sure that all of us become better stewards of our city and our state's history.
Sergio Gonzalez is an associate professor of history at Marquette University. He spoke with WUWM race and ethnicity reporter Taryn Powell. Taryn also spoke with Gloria Layel, the National General Counsel for the League of United Latin American Citizens, also known as LULAC. It's the largest and oldest Hispanic advocacy organization in the country and has councils or chapters at the local and state levels. Layel examines the fallout from the allegations against Chavez and what could come next. She starts the conversation by explaining how LULAC members are currently feeling.
My communications with LULAC members at the national, at the state, but also at the local level, all have pretty much the same concerns. And we are all reckoning with rethinking and possibly reevaluating Cesar Chavez's legacy. Our LULAC members, some of our LULAC members knew him personally, participated in the movement at different levels. We want everyone to know that LULAC recognizes the achievements of this individual, and we do not want them to be lost to history. However, we need to acknowledge that he was a man with many failures and faults, and therefore we also need to acknowledge his misconduct, sexual misconduct, and any other misconduct that may come out. We urge everyone to pause a minute in thinking about reevaluation, okay? Let's not act in haste. And then we need to make sure that we apply whatever decisions we come to in an equal manner. We maybe should rethink renaming streets, buildings, schools, or any building for an individual as opposed to a movement. The principles behind it, equal justice. We need to remember that this was one individual that we elevated to a icon status, rethinking that individuals have failures and sometimes have secrets, and secrets have repercussions. And we want everyone that was in a position to act to be held accountable. There were certainly enablers in the movement. They need to be held accountable as well. I sympathize and feel for the family who may or may not have known about these allegations, and the children, the grandchildren, and how they are dealing with this. So we need to give them their space as well. But we should not engage in revisionist history or revisioners of history. His history contributions are there. His failures are now documented or will be documented. And I know that, for example, in Texas, the Texas Education Administration, TEA, has now called on schools to erase Mr. Cesar Chavez's name from instructional material. That it took us so long to even get included, and now in a rush, hopefully not in a rush, they are now thinking about removing it.
What precedent do you think that sets, if any?
It can be a positive and a negative in the sense that the truth comes out. But like I said, secrets have repercussions. It can be a negative in that it not only violates the privacy of this family, possibly destroys a legacy, but definitely we need to deal with it. For the future, I think institutions may be cautious about naming buildings and entities for individuals as opposed to a movement, because I'm not sure when Mr. Chavez died, but here we are all these years later, and this comes to light. So are we ever quite sure about a person? Are we ever quite sure about people in power? History has shown that after the death of a figurehead, there are some issues. Maybe it didn't rise to this level, but it is understood in today's society that abuse of women, abuse of children especially, is not acceptable in any situation.
I appreciate you adding that there's people involved with LULAC who have a personal connection and are feeling this. How are they dealing with it?
I would say a lot of our members are kind of like in mourning. It's like the death of a person to them that they knew personally. And they are responding with some anger at him, some anger at the victim. And I say, do not blame the victim. Never blame the victim. So we do not want to engage in that. And then just some acceptance. And then how do you deal for it? Okay. Yeah. And then a recognition that in certain societies, men with power have always dominated the opposite sex and have taken advantage of underlings and especially women. And we still find that in society. It's not just the Hispanic culture, but women are also now seeing themselves either as being taken advantage of, having the necessity to speak out, or not.
So people have some internal conflict going on.
This person has done so much for you, has contributed so much to society, to the economic well-being of our people, but yet he's here in a position of power, abusing that power, especially women, and then even young women. It's really hard to reconcile that. So you can either be in denial, accept it, and move on, or not.
As an organization with people who share that connection, how careful do you have to be when making a statement in this moment?
We celebrated the day just like everyone else. My local council was a sponsor of a local march. We had to step back and say, okay, where are we on this? It takes a lot of consideration, collaboration to come up with a statement. At the end, we decided that we needed to focus on the movement and offer our sympathy and that we stood with women, the victims, and the survivors.
Gloria Layel is the National General Counsel of LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens. She spoke with WUWM's race and ethnicity reporter Taryn Powell. In about 10 minutes, we'll check in with the local business owner about how prices are impacting her livelihood and how she's planning for the future. But first, we'll tell you about Axe Housing and all the ways they work to turn renters into home buyers in Milwaukee. That's coming up on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. It's no secret that in Milwaukee, out-of-state investors have been buying up houses to turn into rentals. That means less housing options for people who want to become homeowners. One local nonprofit is trying to counter that trend and get more Milwaukeeans owning their homes in the city. WUWM has been examining systemic housing problems and solutions for more affordable housing in our series Seeking Solutions, Keys to Home Ownership. As part of that series, WUWM's Mayan Silver has this report on Axe Housing.
Yvette Richardson does not play when she's explaining housing basics.
Listen, I'm gonna start calling on y'all. Why is credit important?
She and Alex McCune are in a lofty, high-ceilinged event space just west of Marquette University. These two Acts homebuyer coaches are walking 11 people through the myths of home ownership, tips on how to achieve it, and importantly, how to get finances in order.
Why is credit important? A better life. I know that's right.
Going through these 2 nights of homeowner education makes participants eligible for down payment assistance and certain loans. It then tees them up to work with an Acts homebuyer coach, who will continue guiding them through the sometimes complex process. 25-year-old Bernardo Nieto Ramirez is sitting in the front row, and he's just the kind of guy Acts is looking for.
I guess I've rented for long enough now, and I think we want to move forward with purchasing a house now.
Acts has been around for a long time. Ramirez watched his parents buy their first house through the nonprofit when he was 11 years old.
The requirement was that we were supposed to live there for the first 5 years, and then from there they purchased, I think the 7th year, they purchased another home, and that's currently where they reside right now.
They fixed up their first home, a duplex, and started renting it out. Now they live in Lindsay Heights. Ramirez has the basics of homeownership down, but he wants to fill in the gaps. He's curious about loan applications, getting good terms. That's exactly where Act's homebuyer coaching can step in, says Jordan Villegas. He's a manager with Act's coaching program.
I always recommend your first step to be meeting with a coach, because that coach will help you understand what your barriers are, what's in front of you, and break down your action steps into smaller bite-sized pieces.
That could be looking at preferred lenders, making sure people understand their loan estimates. All of these services are part of Act's comprehensive approach to making homeownership more accessible. It has a lending arm, unsurprisingly called Act's Lending. It helps folks that may be just outside of being pre-approved for a loan with a traditional lender. The organization has realtors and lending and home rehabbing coaches. Then there's Acts Homes, which buys up properties that investors would typically buy. That allows Acts to create more housing inventory, to sell to people working through their program to buy a home. Here's Villegas.
The majority of our folks have been either Black or Latino, some of the underserved populations of Milwaukee. but our doors are open to everybody.
Most people who use ACT services are first-time homebuyers who earn 50 to 80% of the area's median income. We're talking $50,000 to $80,000 a year for a family of 3. They're the missing middle, says Chad Venn. He's director of the Real Estate Certificate Program at UW-Milwaukee's Lubar College of Business. He says it's a really important but tough population to serve.
Because at that price point, at those area median incomes, it's really hard for home builders and apartment developers to make projects work right now with all of the headwinds of the high interest rates, the high cost of labor, the high cost of building, that they're really not able to service that AMI population without some sort of like government assistance or tax credits or some affordability component.
According to a 2022 Wisconsin Policy Forum report, Milwaukee has a 28.9% homeownership rate among Black and Hispanic households. It's the lowest combined rate among the 11 peer cities Milwaukee was included with. ACT's comprehensive approach reduces those barriers to homeownership. They coach families on how to raise their credit scores, pay off debt, and create budgets. They can help people apply for grants through the city, county, federal, and other sources to get up to $10,000 of down payment assistance. And ACT's lending can provide loans of up to $200,000 without requiring a minimum credit score. ACTS is funded primarily by philanthropy, in addition to grants and some city and federal support. In addition to helping home buyers, ACTS also works with home sellers, people like Chad Venn.
My family and I reached out to ACTS Housing a few years ago when my grandmother had passed away. And my grandmother, she lived on the south side of Milwaukee in the same house for 70 years. And that house was part of, where my father grew up and my aunts and uncles grew up. And when she had passed away, my family felt it was pretty important that we wanted to pass down some of that legacy. And so, my mom and dad and my uncles were inclined to try to find somebody that wanted to live in that house similar to what they did.
Houses in Venn's grandmother's neighborhood were being snapped up by investors who were turning them into rental properties. His family didn't want that. So Venn contacted ACTS and negotiated for the nonprofit to buy the house at a lower rate than if it was an open market transaction.
They worked on doing some subtle improvements to the building, and then they ended up selling to one of their ACTS home buying clients that had kind of gone through the education process.
Over the past 3 decades, ACTS has helped more than 4,000 individuals and families buy homes. People generally stay in their homes, and a smaller percentage eventually sell. Very few have foreclosed. The median current ACTS homeowner who purchased before 2023 has earned more than $72,000 in total equity. That's as they pay monthly housing costs that ACTS says on average are 2/3 of what they'd be shelling out to rent an equivalent home. ACTS' impact has increased steadily over the decades. About 1/3 of their homebuyers purchased their homes in the 2020s. But still, they can't help every would-be homebuyer in need of support. Deetra Kemp, VP of Impact at ACTS, says they're limited by capacity, both in terms of staffing and in terms of housing on the market.
Internal capacity, for sure, but also it's, we can only create so much capacity within the market. We've already lost thousands of units, and we're only capable of clawing back 100 a year. So there's work to be done, for sure. There's a lot of work to be done.
In the meantime, it's wise to keep focusing on education and homebuyer coaching, says Venn.
To me, the most powerful thing that I feel that they're doing is that education piece. I mean, housing is very complicated. It's not as simple as, I want to go buy a house. It's part of it is making sure that you're in a financial position to be able to do it and that you understand all the implications that come with it.
Back in the near west side, Bernardo Nieto Ramirez has completed his homebuyer education course. And Alex McCune is handing out graduation certificates.
Bernardo Nieto Ramirez, come up here.
Nieto Ramirez grabs the certificate returns to his seat.
He gonna be the one, I can tell. He gonna be the one. Ready to roll. Congratulations.
Hopefully, on the path to follow in his parents' footsteps and buy his first home. Maayan Silver, 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.
Support for Seeking Solutions, Keys to Home Ownership, comes from presenting sponsor, Educators Credit Union. You can check out all our series coverage at wuwm.com/housing.
WUWM is committed to covering issues our listeners have said are top priorities. That includes the economy. As part of that coverage, we've been exploring how the economy is impacting Wisconsinites with different financial needs and concerns. That's how we first met Ryan Fury, a business owner and mother living in Greendale. Her business, Handmade MKE, specializes in handmade accessories like headbands and clips. Along with her husband, Will, Ryan is raising a 13-year-old daughter and looking toward their future. But as we've heard, business has been tough. Tariffs and an uncertain economy have made it difficult for her to plan for what's next. Ryan joins me now to talk about what's been happening and how she's trying to prepare for the unknown. Ryan, thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be back.
So one of the biggest seasons for your business is Christmas. How did it go for you?
Yeah, so November was really rough. And then December, I ran a lot of sales and kind of got my footing back that way. But Black Friday was not very good.
Why do you think that is?
There's so many Black Fridays, Cyber Mondays, Shop Small Saturday, that it almost seems like what's the point of, there's no like rush to purchase anything in the same way that we experienced even like 5 years ago. So everyone knows that, you know, there's going to be sales. Nothing is a buy now before it's gone anymore.
Sure. Have you found that you've had to raise prices still?
Yes. So my prices have stayed the same because the raw cost of materials have stayed the same, if not gotten a little bit worse. I know with the recent Supreme Court decision, it sounded really good. Maybe restored a little bit of faith for the American people, but nothing's really going to change because, from my understanding, immediately after that decision was made, the administration looked into, I think it's Section 301, and
they found some kind of loophole, it seems.
They found some kind of loophole, which basically gives them until July to investigate these countries, and then they negotiate, quote-unquote negotiate, what the tariff rate is going to be, and everyone's expecting it'll basically just stay the same.
Mm. How would you say things are looking for your business right now?
I had a rough start to the year. Again, tried to stay afloat, running sales. If anyone has an online business, the people like free shipping over any kind of like discount. And then really 2 or 3 weeks ago, things have kind of, they haven't flatlined, but I've definitely seen a drop off. And I don't know if that's a reaction to what's happening in Iran or what. But yeah, my husband and I have had the conversation of, okay, we're going to start setting aside a certain amount of money just in case, you know, I have to go find a different career. But I'm pretty stubborn. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I can't fail.
Speaking of your family, your daughter is in one of those kind of pivotal ages. She's 13 years old, growing, I'm sure, needing different things. How are price tags looking?
Yeah, we just had to buy new shoes again. and everything feels like it's $100. And if you find something on sale, it's $75. Yeah, even shopping at Plato's Closet or TJ Maxx, it's still, you never feel like you're getting a good deal.
This next question is...
I'm scared.
It's just going to dig into that.
Okay.
How are things? I mean, I go to the grocery store. I know that they're not great for just, me, my husband, and our pets. How are things at the grocery store?
Insane. I'm just thinking a couple days ago, we stopped at Sendik's. Granted, it's Sendik's. You know what you're going to get. But they have a really good hot bar. And when you don't want to cook dinner, you can just, grab stuff from the hot bar. And I went to go get a box of cereal, Frosted Flakes. And it was like $9 for Frosted Flakes. And I was like, what is happening?
It used to be that cereal was one of those things you just kind of have on the shelf and, maybe eat it for breakfast every day, depending on who you are, but also just have it, just in case. But
yeah, it's not a big deal if you have to throw away half a box. Now it's like you have cereal rations.
As you're looking at the future, what are your hopes when you look like just 6 months down the line, a year down the line? What are your hopes for your family, for your business, when you think about the economy especially?
I think last time I said that my dreams have gotten smaller, and I will say that that has not changed. If anything, they've gotten maybe even a little smaller than that. I hope that my business just stays afloat until the world kind of settles down. I don't know if it will ever go back to normal. I guess I hope that for my family as well, that, we stay safe. Everything is just so chaotic right now in all aspects of life. We're supposed to go on a family vacation at the end of August. Hopefully that's still going to happen. I feel like we're all just waiting for that 2 years from now when things maybe go back to normal. I don't even know how to plan.
Yeah. How does that feel? Thinking to yourself, maybe in 2 years.
Just frustrating. I think when I look at my business, I get so frustrated because I feel in a way that I'm back to where I was in the beginning when I'm looking at small purchases and being like, can I justify this? Does this make sense? There's no freedom that I feel like I should have at this point in my career. I've been doing it almost 12 years now. And it's just hard to look at something that you put so much time and effort into and you're watching it struggle through not necessarily bad decisions that you've made, but just what's happening that's outside of your control. So that's just frustrating.
Ryan Fury is a business owner and mother living in Greendale, Wisconsin. I spoke with her as part of our series on the economy. You can find other coverage from that series at WUWM.com. And if you want to take Lake Effect on the go, you can listen to us as a podcast. Find it wherever you get your podcasts. Then subscribe, download, and listen on demand. Still to come, we're testing your skills to see if you can identify a real-world lie or one made up by the Burlington Liars Club. That's next on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. Lance Armstrong, Elizabeth Holmes, Jay Gatsby. Typically, we shun liars in all forms, whether they're politicians, financiers, or fictional characters. We teach our kids not to lie, and we expect our friends to be truthful, even when it hurts. But the Burlington Liars Club is different. Here, lies are celebrated and platformed in an annual contest for who can tell the best lie. T. Krulos is a contributing writer for Milwaukee Magazine who wrote about the Burlington Liars Club. He joins Lake Effect's Sam Woods to put WUWM's journalistic integrity to the test and celebrate the liars among us.
T, I'm going to start off with a question about the Burlington Liars Club's history, and I'm going to trust you to tell me the truth about it. Yes, there's going to be a lot of line and truth puns here, so get ready. But what is the club's origin story?
It's a really fun story. So in 1929, there was a couple of journalists. One was from Burlington, and for New Year's Eve, they decided to play sort of a hoax, and they wrote a fake article that described how every liar in town in Burlington had gathered at the police station, and they had this big contest to determine who was the greatest liar of them all.
And the story itself is a hoax. That didn't happen.
That didn't happen. And I think it was probably a slow news day. It was the holidays. They're like, let's just do something kind of funny and play a joke on people. Well, this story started to circulate a lot, and people started inquiring, how can I join this contest? I'm a great liar. I want to throw my hat in the ring. And so the journalists decided that they would start an actual Burlington Liars Club with an annual lying competition. And that's happened every year since.
You know, as a journalist, I wish on a slow news day I could just make things up or just say like, hey, wouldn't this be fun? But unfortunately, we're not looking to start a WWM Liars Club here. But I have a question on how this works, right? So who is allowed to submit a lie to the Liars Club? And can you submit on behalf of someone? I'm thinking like a famous athlete or a politician that told a famous lie and say like, oh, this should be the best lie.
Politicians aren't allowed to enter. You can join the club for $1. You have to send $1 and you'll get a card. And it's open to anyone in the world. So they've received submissions from tens of thousands over the years from all over the world.
You mentioned you can gain entry into the Liars Club, but what does entry into the club get you? Just kind of a title of I am a credentialed liar, perhaps?
You get a card that you can write your own name in, and then I guess it's the bragging rights of being part of this club.
Sure. So in writing this article for Milwaukee Magazine, I'm guessing you were able to, dive into the treasure trove of lies that have been collected over, again, nearly 100 years. In summation, though, what makes a good Liars Club lie?
Yeah, and that's an important distinction because when I first heard about them, I was thinking like we kind of mentioned, politics. To me, a lie can be a very malicious thing. This is something that can ruin relationships or cause all sorts of huge problems. So I was like, ooh, lying club. But these lies are a lot more benign, and I would say they're mostly like puns or witty plays on words, and they're meant to be fun, So it's not like this who can tell the most vicious, damaging lie. It's just like more like who has the best joke that's kind of framed as a lie. So, for example, one of the winners one year was someone said that it was so cold outside that they had seen an earthworm steal the fur coat off of a caterpillar and then go back into his hole.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's just kind of a funny little joke,
Yeah, harmless. I imagine, an alternate reality where the Burlington Liars Club was dedicated to these vicious, damaging lies. And I don't know if they'd make it 100 years. I think they might ruffle some feathers. Yeah. In a second, we will play a little game where we try to determine what's a Burlington Liars Club lie versus a famous lie or a lie told that was maybe malicious and damaging. But before that, I'm curious, T, have you ever submitted a lie to the Liars Club?
Not yet. I kind of found out about this and put the article together, and but maybe next year.
Right. Now that you know what it takes.
Right. Exactly. I got the inside scoop. I know what it takes. I think I can do it.
All right. Well, as I mentioned, I want to end with a bit of a game. So I will repeat a few lies, which are either previous winning entries to the Burlington Liars Club or edited versions of famous lies.
Okay.
And together we'll see if we can tell the difference between those who lie for fun and those who have told famous lies before often their downfall. The famous lies will contain direct quotes along with some adaptations in my best attempt to mimic the Liars Club style. So does that make sense? You ready?
Makes sense. Lay it on me.
All right. So the first lie is... My grandfather's clock is so old that its pendulum's shadow has worn a hole in the back of the clock. Is this a Liars Club lie or a famous lie?
I will say it sounds very much like a Liars Club lie. I mean, that's the style.
It is indeed a Liars Club lie. It is the 1933/34. I couldn't tell if it was 1933 or 1934 or perhaps both.
They're probably counting it as both because it's like New Year's Eve. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is a lie from almost 100 years ago.
Nice.
From Bruno Ceresa. And 25 years into the club's existence, the Liars Club claimed that this was the best lie in those first 25 years. So great job, Bruno. You have a lasting reputation as a fun liar.
Yeah.
All right. So the second lie we have is... The allegations against me are an unconstitutional witch hunt. The only thing I hunt are unfair advantages, which every contestant does.
I don't think that that's a Burlington Club lie. I was going to say a politician for sure until you mentioned like the contestant at the end. So now it makes me think it was maybe on a game show, maybe the game show scandal. I forget which one it was. But yeah, I don't think it was a club lie.
It is not a Burlington Club lie. It is a famous lie. It is a lie from Lance Armstrong, a bicyclist and former winner of 7 Tour de France titles, who was stripped of his accolades after admitting to illegal doping. He initially described the allegations against him as an unconstitutional witch hunt. And I get what you mean, though, about the contestant. Yeah. I originally put bicyclist there, but it's like, T will know. That'll tip it off. That'll be too easy.
Well, in the witch hunt thing, of course, that's famously been used as a political.
Yes.
It's a witch hunt. It's always something
yes.
Yeah.
But you correctly detected that this is not a Liars Club lie. All this is a real lie. This is a real life lie.
Yeah.
You know your lies.
You got to wake up pretty early in the morning to fool me.
Well, I got 2 more. I'm gonna try to fool you. And so I got 2 more. The next one is. Let me clear this up. Thanos wanted to end half of humanity, but Theranos can save us all. This is what happens when you work to change things. First they think you're crazy, then they fight you, then all of a sudden you save half the world.
That would be a great Burlington lie, but I think that's a lie from the CEO of Theranos or someone associated.
It is indeed a lie from Elizabeth Holmes, the disgraced founder of Theranos. Probably shouldn't have put that. I couldn't resist the Thanos and Theranos there. But yes, that was a pretty good tip-off there. So Elizabeth Holmes, the disgraced founder of Theranos, which was a company that claimed to revolutionize blood testing. And after raising $700 million, Holmes was found to be a fraud. But not before claiming it was all a hoax to fight her and paint her as crazy. We love someone who doubles down on the lie right before the fall. It really makes it that much better.
Yes.
Okay, so the last lie I have for you, T, is this. My parents were so poor that they had to bury grandfather naked just so my dad had a suit to wear to the funeral.
Well, I know this one, so I'll say I have the unfair advantage because I was very curious to see who Burlington Liars Club, what lie would win this year, and that was the award-winning best lie for 2024.
It is indeed the most recent best lie. It was told by Reagan Buchholz, the club's most recent winner. And with that winning lie, T. Krulos, I want to thank you for joining me to tell the truth on Lake Effect and for taking part in this silly little game of lies.
Thanks much.
T. Krulos is a contributing writer for Milwaukee Magazine, who wrote about the Burlington Liars Club earlier this year. That's when he spoke with Lake Effect's Sam Woods. And that wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Joy Powers. If you missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at wuwm.com. If you'd like to take the show on the go, you can download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Judges Chris Taylor and Marie Lazar are running for a seat on the state Supreme Court. Tomorrow on Lake Effect, we'll hear from them on why they feel they're right for the job. Thanks so much for joining us right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.